And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage. And you're joining us on our podcast, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. Today, my guest is Cameron Herold. Cameron is known as the CEO Whisperer. He is the former COO of 800 Got Junk. He is a multiple author. He has spoken in 26 countries and has lectured at MIT Entrepreneurial Masters Program, a world-renowned thought leader, and he's even been covered on a little show called Oprah. So welcome aboard, Cameron.
Hey, Peter, thank you.
And Oprah thanks you for launching her career, from what I hear.
Yeah, that's what it was.
So anyway, let's just dive right in. So you've got a really cool story going from sort of the business world to the entrepreneurial space to this sort of accidental thought leader of sorts, right?
Yeah, very accidental, actually.
Yeah. So let's talk about like how the hell did this happen?
I guess so. I built a number of companies. I was raised as an entrepreneur. In fact, I did a TED talk about raising kids as entrepreneurs about 10 years ago. So I had been an entrepreneur really from the get go, had 12 employees when I was 21, had built a few different businesses, and got to know the founder of 1 800 Got Junk. We were in a forum together in EO together for 4 years. He asked me if I would coach him. That was about 20 years ago. And I started coaching him behind the scenes. Then he asked me if I would join him, and we built 1 800 Got Junk. I was the 14th employee. When I left 6.5 years later, we had 3,100 employees.
Wow.
And then during that growth phase, we started getting asked to do a lot of speaking events. And I had already built 3 companies prior to that. So people started kind of pointing fingers at me to find out, what have you done? What have you done? And Brian and I were really a bit of a two in a box. We really did it together. And so when I left that company almost 13 years ago, I started coaching entrepreneurs and CEOs, companies with usually 50 to 500 employees. And within about 3 years, 4 or 5 of the companies that I had coached had sold to GoDaddy for over 100 million or had become number one for in Canada, like really kind of big explosive growth. And that started again pointing fingers towards me as a thought leader, as a CEO whisperer. And a couple of my clients asked me to write a book, and I'm like, there's no fucking way I'm writing a book. Like, I don't want to write a book. Like, I didn't even like the idea of having my name on a book, let alone writing one. And then one of the speakers bureaus,
How'd you feel about reading books before that?
I loved reading
Okay.
until my
Okay.
eyes started going on me, and then I realized I either needed glasses or a podcast or audiobook.
Right.
But then one of my speakers bureaus, David Lavin from the Lavin Agency
Yeah, sure.
in Toronto, David asked me if he said, if you have a book, we can get higher speaking fees. And I'm like, yeah, but who will pay me to speak? And he goes, well, what are you charging? And I'm like, I don't know, like $3,000. He goes, oh, I can't book you for $3,000. I'm like, is that too much? He goes, no, it's too little.
Exactly.
I'm like, what do you think you could get? He goes, if you had a book, I can get 10,000. And I said, I laughed like, well, there's no fucking way you can book me for 10,000. A week later, he called. He goes, I got 10,000 for you. I think if we had a book, we can get 15. So I got together with a client from actually an EOer who I taught at MIT, a guy named Clint Greenleaf, had a company called Greenleaf Books.
Sure. I know Clint. Yeah.
Well, Clint,
He was actually a publisher. Did you publish with Clint?
I did. I did my very first book, Double Double. I published with Greenleaf, and I actually met him at Endicott House at MIT in the bathroom. And a year later, he published Double Double. That was about 11 years ago now. So that was the first book, and it really was a bit of a home run. People really liked it. They
Yeah.
codified the lessons on how to grow an insanely great culture and company. And then my speaking fees started going up, so that kind of led me into the thought leader world.
So I want to back up into a point that you made that you went through quickly that I think is critical is
Sure.
as an entrepreneur myself and a business guy, right? You'd think, okay, well, if I'm starting out as speaking, like let me start low. Like $3,000 seems sort of reasonable-ish, kind of maybe. And what's interesting is what Lavin told you is, yeah. I can't sell you at $3,000, but geez, I can sell you at 10 or 15.
Yeah.
It almost defies the law of logic and economics. And I work with a lot of folks early on, and it's like, geez, okay. Step one, if you're speaking at $5,000 starting tomorrow, charge 15. It's so much easier to sell a speech at 5 digits than it is at 4 digits.
Well, it's interesting. It's almost like you don't take someone seriously unless they're
Sure.
spending enough. You take a $200,000 Ferrari much more seriously than you take a $20,000 Prius.
Yep.
And if you land one speaking event, you can put some of that money into marketing and branding. And So that's why I've published my books with really great publishers. It's why I've worked really hard on my brand. But my speaking fees are now 30,000 plus travel. Uh, my
Sure.
inter- my international fees are 50,000 plus travel,
Yep.
and I get those all the time.
Yeah, no, great stuff. So one thing I would say is, given your first book came out, what is that, a dozen years ago, plus or
Yeah, about
minus?
11, I think 11 years ago.
Yeah. So the model of come out with a book and that is a validation or justification for a high speaking fee doesn't really work anymore, quite frankly, right? Because what's happened is due to
A lot of self-publishing.
yeah, due to sort of lower end self publishing. So Greenleaf is a phenomenal firm. They do great work, as are many others. But pretty much anybody and their mother could get a book out today
Yeah,
in any way they choose. So the old model of get a book out and move your fee from X to Y, you can just do the math and go, what's the ROI on that? Doesn't really work. If you're going to get a book out today, it needs to be of the highest quality, regardless of who your publisher is. And I don't care who your publisher is. You as the author are also bought yourself a job as SVP of marketing for that book.
yeah. I think a lot of people think that they're going to have a book and it's just going to sell, and that's not the case. I've worked very hard on my social media platform. I was in the first 200,000 people in the world on LinkedIn, and I was one of the first people on Twitter. I was using Facebook before any of our 250 employees at 1-800 Got Junk. So I've been big into the social media world. I've also been really big in PR and getting a lot of press coverage about me and my brand or me and my books. In fact, my most recent book that came out in January is called Free PR, and it's how to go out and generate publicity about you and your speaking and your clients, etc. So you have, yeah, and you have to work really, really hard at. One of the things I've always hated about a lot of the self-publishing books is that they were littered with typos or grammar, or they just look cheesy. Like that just doesn't sell. All of my books, actually, with the exception of the Miracle Morning for Entrepreneurs, my four other books are all hardcover. Um, I co-authored with Hal Elrod on the Miracle Morning for Entrepreneurs, and he wanted to stay paperback on that, so we did. But the typesetting is good. There's no spelling or grammar. When Meetings Suck came out, which was my second book, we found one typo, and it was a space in between the letter T and a period. That's it in the
Yep.
entire book.
Yep. Well, and there's really no excuse for poor quality today, regardless
No.
of who publishes. There's just none.
Well, and then I think a lot of thought leaders have also tried to use books as a way to sell people into their course. And I think that discredits you, and it also really cheapens your product and your service. If you're going to write a book, you should really be giving the reader a lot of really solid take home value. If they want theory, they can read Malcolm Gladwell's work.
Well, let me sort of unpack that a little bit. So I agree if the path that you're going is you don't hold back in the book. Anything that you have to say should be in the book. The book shouldn't be a teaser to, and then now pay me $100 for some course. If you
Yeah,
think about the most successful books of all time, Seven Habits, a Gladwell book, what, Good to Great. They're not giving
good to
you
great.
what's that?
Yeah, I'm rereading The Flywheel this morning. I was rereading the section on the flywheel.
Yeah,
I think that
yeah,
you
but
can have courses, you can have other products like courses and speaking videos and things that you sell, but the book itself should stand alone on its own.
and I think that's true. I think it should stand alone and it should be complete, right? It's not the teaser because I think there's a direct to consumer model where everything is always about the teaser and the next thing and the click funnels and all this other sort of craziness.
Exactly. Yeah,
I live and operate in the B2B world, right? And it's a much more sophisticated buyer, be they entrepreneurs, be they Fortune 1000, et cetera. And you're not going to get away with that sort of gaming of the system with them. You're just not.
correct. Agreed. Yeah, you're not going to just take them through your funnels.
So
They don't have time for it.
So let's talk about your evolution from speaker, right? Lower fee to higher fee. You've 10 extra speaking fee. Successful author, right? You've now got, was it 4 or 5 books under your belt? What are the other services, solutions, et cetera? How else can I give you money? What else can you do to monetize your content?
Oh gosh, lots of ways. I have referral programs. I built a really, really strong brand for myself as a thought leader and a connector. So now I've got M&A firms, digital marketing firms, fractional CFOs, fractional CMOs, copywriters, executive search firms, and I introduce CEOs and their companies to all of my kind of trusted pool of resources. And I get referral checks every month. And everybody knows I get a referral check. And my whole comment is, you can spend 25 years figuring out what search firms to
Yep.
work with, or I can just put you in the directions of the ones that will crush it for you. So me leveraging my brand and having, those checks coming in every month are big.
Love it. So let me reverse engineer that if I could, and correct me if I'm wrong. So you put at the center of your universe the COO, right? That's who you serve and who you serve best. And then you said,
Oh, no, it's actually for me, it's the CEO.
okay,
So my core purpose is helping entrepreneurs make their dreams happen. In fact, Simon Sinek, he was on our board 16 years ago, about 5 years before his book came out. And Simon helped me create my core purpose, helping entrepreneurs make their dreams happen. So for me, when I coach the COO or when I run the
yep,
COO Alliance or the Second in Command podcast, all of those things help the COO to help the CEO make their dreams happen.
got it. Okay, so if the CEO, I stand corrected, is the center of your universe, then
Yeah.
you analyze that and say, okay, so they're working with me, they love me, they trust me, they dig what I say, I understand them. What else can I do to help them? Well, they look at
Bingo.
placement firms. Well, they look at whatever. So you now you built this sort of secondary circle around here's some other things that they need help with. I don't have that expertise, but I can vet that expertise through and I'm a trusted advisor to them, and therefore continue to monetize the relationships in the network you have. Is that a fair sort of decomposition?
Exactly right. So as long as what I do is consistent with my core purpose, then it works. So as an example, all of my products really focus on the small to medium enterprise space.
Yep.
My books are written for the small to medium enterprise space. My coaching is, my speaking is, my CEO Alliance is. I don't do work for government. The only Fortune 100 that I've ever coached, I coached the CEO and the second in command at Sprint for about 18 months. Very, very different, but that's because I was personal friends with the CEO. So all of my work, I don't work with nonprofits. It's always in that kind of small to medium enterprise space.
If you're enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about our podcast, please leave us a review and share it with your friends. We're available on Apple Podcast and on all major listening apps, as well as at thoughtleadershipleverage.com/podcasts. Cool. So one of the things that we do early on with our clients, so you've got a thought leader, they come to us and say, hey, I've got, some stuff on leadership, management, whatever it is. And we say, great, who's your target market? Oh, this could be for everyone. And I cringe, right? Because we spend a lot of time saying, let's develop the client avatar or avatars, doesn't have to just be one, right? And then let's figure out the pain points that they're in and figure out what's unique about what you're bringing to the table that connects to what's keeping them up at night. And, it seems counterintuitive to decrease the size of your market, but it always, always, always works in my humble experience.
Yeah, when you niche.
Yep.
So, you mentioned that I've done speaking events in 26 countries. Most of my global speaking events, I've done speaking on 6 continents, have been with EO or with YPO. I've done other organizations, but those two organizations keep booking me at all their chapters and regional events around the world.
Yep.
And it's because I'm really, really targeted on that audience. I know their members, I know their pain points. I've been a member, so I just really know my fit. Whereas other speakers are way better into, the corporate world.
Yep. And that, I would imagine, that also guides you and forces you to be more effective. Where if an opportunity comes across your desk to say, hey, let's go, here's an event you can speak at for these trade associations or for, a Fortune 1000. I mean, you know who your peeps are, right? So,
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned trade associations. Years ago, I spoke for the American Society of Association Executives, and that was it was okay, but the reality was 95% of their members are really not ever going to be clients of mine.
right.
So even though I got paid and I went, it probably would have been better for me to say no and spent my time on cold calling or hanging out with my kids.
Yeah.
It would have been better to have not taken that check because it really didn't lead to anything else. I think a lot of speakers and thought leaders have to be more strategic with everything they do. It can't just be. I heard a great saying years ago that has haunted me ever since, and it's that most speakers die broke.
Yeah, I cannot tell you how depressing and true that is in our work over the last 15 plus years with hundreds of authors and thought leaders. We've worked with many, many, so former name brands. They had a New York Times best-selling book in the 80s and 90s. They're a name brand, you'd know their stuff. And
Nothing.
here they are 65, 70, 75, and they were making, 30, 40 grand a gig 20 years ago. And they're like, yeah, I need to get back to X because blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, sort of where's the money? Like, where
Well,
do you go?
that's why you really have to look for multiple ways to monetize
Yeah.
your list, to build a list. One of the lessons I learned years ago from J. Conrad Levinson, who is the author of Google Marketing, when he died, he had 180,000 people on his weekly fax broadcast, and those people were paying him $2 a month. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, but that was $360,000 a month, $4 million a year, and it took one $50,000 person to run that. That's a lot of money, man.
Yeah.
So Jay was smart. He would say, 10 grand to do a speaking event? Fuck yeah, as long as I can get 85% of that audience on my $2 a month plan.
Right. You get an annuity out of that. Exactly.
Right. Versus other speakers that think it's about getting the fee, or they think so another example, every single speaking event that I do, every single member of every audience for 9 years has received a copy of at least one of my books.
Yep.
I either get paid for the books, or I give the books out at a discount, or they pay for my free plus shipping to the audience. Worst case scenario, I'm bringing them for free for everybody. But that book, and that's why I published with Scribe. I did my most recent 3 books with what used to be called Book in a Box.
Yep.
So those guys have been amazing at getting a hard copy price of my book down to $1.60, and the quality really, really high. I can afford to use that as a marketing tool.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Talk about for a minute, you're an entrepreneur, so you're applying obviously your business building skills and your entrepreneurial skills to the thought leadership game. Most people, and I would say most by like north of 90% of really good authors and thought leaders and such, just don't have those skills. And that's not a judgment, right? They're maybe they're academics, it's life experience, they're great consultants, etc. So they're creating amazing content and they're, great research and they're top of their game as a performer in terms of their speaking skills, but they're lacking that business savvy. What would you say to those folks?
I don't know them. That's not a criticism, but my world has always been the entrepreneurial
Okay.
space, right? I was groomed as an entrepreneur. My father was an entrepreneur. Both my grandfathers were entrepreneurs. My sister, my brother, and myself, we all run our own companies today and have for over 15 years each. Like, my whole world has always been the entrepreneurial world. So I don't really know people, even if I think about my friends, most of my friends are entrepreneurs. I don't really affiliate or know people who have jobs. I don't really hang with lawyers or accountants or doctors. I don't understand that
Yep.
world. I don't fit. It's like a guy showing up at a girl's bachelorette party. We just don't fit in the room, right? I don't fit in the world of non-entrepreneurs. So I don't understand. I don't know speakers that are just the theorists. I don't, and when I read their books, they don't resonate with me because I want the tips. I want the tactical take home. I want the
Sure. You want the
shortcuts.
hacks. Yeah.
Um,
Well, I'll answer the question, which is, develop the processes and systems and partner with those that can support you and help you, because my world's a little different, right? So there's a subset of my world are lots of folks like you, but a lot of people that come out of academia or, a former CEO of Fortune 500 or something like that, they're not entrepreneurs, right? And they need to understand, listen, if you're really, really good at the content side without having distribution, marketing, sales, product development, social media, here's the list of things, you're going to fail. So you better either build it or buy it.
Yeah, that's where there's some amazing thought leaders, who, if they partner with people that are fantastic at digital meeting and distribution and marketing, and they'll win, because there's a lot of great people that are amazing at marketing and distribution and
Yep.
creating courses that haven't got an idea of content, right? They don't have any good content. But if you match those two together, it's like nitro, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Well,
Yeah, so if I was a thought leader, like someone let's say I was a thought leader coming out of academia and I've got some amazing research and I'm like world renowned, or I'm just really, really good, I would get to know some Gen Y 25 to 30-year-olds who can build funnels for me, and I'd give them a percentage. I would find people who can do my marketing and I would give them a percentage. I would try to get people and give them a percentage of revenue, not pay the fees, because a lot of the marketers want the fees for their expertise. I think if you're that darn good, you would be happy to do the work for me for a percentage of revenue. So, like, I've got a guy right now in Hawaii who's going to be doing some mass marketing for my book Meetings Suck, because people are buying 100 copies of that at a time. He's doing it for pure 50% of revenue.
yep.
He's paying the advertising cost.
Well, and I think, from my perspective, it depends, right? Because we're in the services business on my side, and we do make a lot of investments in a subset of our clients, but there's criteria that we're looking at. So the other side of that coin is that marketer that's taking that 50% deal with you. He's had to vet you and say, does this guy have the brand? Does he have the chops? Does he have the, check, 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 check.
Yep.
Okay, now I'm willing to take the risk. The problem is people come to the table premature and want to do a rev share deal. And listen, I want to make money just as much as the next guy. But if I'm going to invest my money in you, you've got to have a bunch of things in place in order to increase our joint probability of being successful. And if you don't, you can pay me to build those, but I'm not going to build those on the come.
Well, I'll give you a strategic idea, just something to toy with. Play with this just like for shits and giggles at your leadership team. Imagine if you could flip your model or 30% of your model to become more like a venture capitalist. Like VCs get pitched all day and they only take the deals they want.
Yep.
They're never out looking for clients. Imagine if you could work on a pure commission basis where you only took the deals you wanted and you told the other 95% of them to get lost.
We do a bit of that, but we have, and we don't market it aggressively. We know, so we have a channel that does that for us.
Yeah.
But like I said, we're very, very, what's the word I'm looking for?
You guys are good at what you do.
Yeah. Well, thank you. But we're strict at like, listen, more people, it's probably 20-1 that come to us with like, hey, let's do a deal. And if they don't meet criteria that we know are key success factors, it's just not worth our time, right? Because I'm putting my team's time on it. That's dollars. So cool. Anyway, this has been awesome. Any final words of wisdom to maybe someone out there that's in a situation you were in 15 years ago, just sort of making that breakthrough? Like what should, do this, don't do that.
Well, you mentioned Stephen Covey, and I'll go back to, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'll go back to really his lesson number 1, which is begin with the end in mind. That if you're going to be a thought leader, if you're writing a book or doing a podcast or going to be a blogger or whatever, think about strategically, where are you taking this over the next 3 to 10 years?
Yep.
How does this strategically fit longer term? Because then you'll start making decisions that are aligned with that. I have some very good friends. I won't necessarily have to name drop them, but some people that we have all heard of who have big publishing deals, big ones, and they hate their publishing deals because their cost per book is $8 per book. They have no ability to give away 1,000 books. So they kind of went, oh shit, I took $250,000 or took a $400,000 advance. I would have been way better off to have self-published with a group like Scribe and paid 30 grand to have Scribe do my book for me and be able to buy my books at $1.60.
Yep. Well, people don't realize that in advance. First of all, they're rare these days. They're quite rare. But you have to measure in advance, as you would any other business piece, it's cash flow. So if you're going to take the money off the table now and then pay later, like you said, the difference of $1.60 to $8 a book, and you're going to sell books, that's right. A dumb deal.
But most people don't think strategically, right? Or they don't think strategically about, where am I going to drive my speaking focus for the next 3 years? Or where am I going to spend my time? Be on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or whatever. So it's really being strategic with everything you decide to do.
Awesome. Well, this has been great, Cameron. Thank you so much for your transparency, your time, and just being real and sharing your story with us. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.